The cameras flashed non-stop as celebrities arrived at the Metropolitan Museum of Art on that warm May evening in 2025. Everyone expected to see the usual designer gowns, custom suits, and avant-garde outfits that pushed fashion boundaries. The red carpet buzzed with excitement as stars posed for photographers and journalists, shouted questions from behind velvet ropes. Then something completely unexpected happened. A sleek black car pulled up to the entrance, and everyone assumed another A-list celebrity was about to make their grand entrance. The door opened, and a tall figure stepped out wearing something nobody had anticipated. It was a man in full ceremonial uniform of the British Royal Guard, complete with the iconic red jacket, black trousers with red stripes, and the famous bearskin hat that stood nearly 18 inches tall. The crowd fell silent for a moment. Photographers lowered their cameras in confusion. Was this some kind of publicity stunt? A performance art piece? Security guards exchanged worried glances, unsure whether to intervene. The man in uniform walked forward with perfect military posture, his polished black boots clicking against the pavement. His face remained stoic and expressionless, exactly as royal guards are trained to maintain while on duty at Buckingham Palace. He didn't smile, didn't wave, and didn't acknowledge the growing chaos around him. His name was James Harrison, and he was indeed a real member of the Queen's Guard. But what nobody knew yet was why he was there, and the incredible story behind his appearance would soon captivate the entire world. James had served in the Grenadier Guards for 8 years. His duties normally included standing watch outside royal residences, participating in state ceremonies, and representing the British military with dignity and discipline. He took his role seriously and had never done anything to bring unwanted attention to himself or his regiment. 3 months before the Met Gala, James received devastating news. His younger sister, Emily, had been diagnosed with a rare form of cancer. She was only 24 years old and had always been his closest family member. Their parents had passed away when they were teenagers, and they had only each other. Emily was a fashion student in New York City, pursuing her dream of becoming a designer. She lived in a tiny apartment in Brooklyn and worked part-time at a vintage clothing store while finishing her degree. Fashion was her entire world. She spent hours sketching designs, studying the history of haute couture, and dreaming about the day she might see her own creations worn by someone important. Her biggest dream was to attend the Met Gala. She had poster-sized photographs of past events covering her apartment walls. She could name every designer, every dress, and every memorable moment from the last 20 years of galas. It was more than just a fashion event to her. It represented everything she wanted to achieve in life. When the cancer diagnosis came, doctors told Emily she needed to start aggressive treatment immediately. The prognosis was uncertain. She might have years ahead of her, or she might have only months. Nobody could say for sure. James flew to New York as soon as he could arrange leave from his duties. He found his sister trying to be brave, but he could see the fear in her eyes. They sat in her small apartment, surrounded by her fashion sketches and magazine clippings, and she finally broke down crying. "I just wanted to go once," she said, looking at a photo of the previous year's Met Gala on her wall. "Just once I wanted to see it in person, to see the dresses up close, to feel like I was part of that world, even for one night." James held her hand and made a promise. "You're going to beat this," he told her, "and when you do, we'll find a way to get you there." But as weeks passed and Emily's treatment took a toll on her body, James realized that waiting might mean never fulfilling her dream. The 2025 Met Gala was approaching, and Emily was too weak to travel. She spent most days in bed, her hair gone from chemotherapy, her energy depleted. James began thinking about what he could do. He didn't have connections in the fashion world. He didn't know any celebrities or designers. He was just a soldier who stood guard outside palaces and followed orders. But he loved his sister more than anything, and he couldn't stand watching her dream slip away. That's when he came up with an idea that seemed completely crazy. What if he went to the Met Gala himself? Not as a guest, because he could never get an invitation, but as himself in his uniform, representing everything his sister loved about tradition, ceremony, and spectacle. He knew it was risky. Wearing his military uniform without authorization for such a purpose could get him in serious trouble. He could be disciplined, demoted, or even discharged from service. The Royal Guard uniform wasn't a costume. It represented centuries of British military tradition and the dignity of the monarchy. But when he visited Emily in the hospital and saw how weak she had become, he made his decision. He would do it. He would find a way to make his sister's dream come true, even if he couldn't bring her there in person. James began planning carefully. He researched everything about the Met Gala. He learned that while the guest list was exclusive and invitations were nearly impossible to obtain, the red carpet was accessible to photographers and press with proper credentials. He also discovered that security, while tight, focused mainly on keeping uninvited people from entering the museum itself. He contacted an old friend who worked as a freelance photographer in New York. He explained his situation and his sister's condition. The friend was moved by the story and agreed to help. He would get James onto the red carpet area as his photography assistant, which would give him legitimate access to the arrivals zone. James didn't tell Emily about his plan. He didn't want to get her hopes up in case it failed. He simply told her he would be thinking of her on the night of the gala, and that she should watch the live stream coverage if she felt up to it. On the evening of the event, James put on his full ceremonial uniform in his hotel room. He looked at himself in the mirror and thought about all the times he had worn this uniform while performing his duties. This time was different. This time, he was wearing it for love, for family, for a dying girl's dream. His heart pounded as the car drove toward the Metropolitan Museum. He knew what he was about to do was unconventional and possibly foolish, but he also knew it was right. As he stepped out of the car and onto the red carpet, hearing the crowd's confused reaction, James Harrison stood tall and began walking forward. He had no idea that what happened in the next few minutes would change everything, not just for him and his sister, but for everyone watching around the world. James continued walking down the red carpet with measured steps, his expression unchanged despite the chaos erupting around him. Photographers began snapping pictures frantically once they realized this wasn't a joke or a brief moment. This man was actually proceeding down the carpet as if he belonged there. Security personnel spoke urgently into their radios. Event organizers rushed toward the area, trying to figure out who had authorized this and whether it posed any threat. Celebrity publicists grabbed their phones, worried that their clients' carefully planned entrances were being overshadowed by this bizarre interruption. But James didn't stop. He walked with the same disciplined posture he maintained during changing of the guard ceremonies. His eyes looked straight ahead. His white-gloved hands stayed at his sides. Everything about his demeanor communicated that he was there with purpose. Not as a prank or disruption, Anna Wintour, the legendary editor-in-chief of Vogue and the driving force behind the Met Gala for decades, was standing near the entrance when she heard the commotion. She turned to see the uniformed guard walking up the carpet, and her first reaction was confusion mixed with curiosity. In all her years organizing this event, she had never seen anything like this. Who authorized this? She asked her assistant sharply. No one, the assistant replied, looking panicked. Security is about to remove him. Anna raised her hand to stop them. Something about the dignity in the man's bearing made her pause. This wasn't some attention-seeking crasher trying to make a scene. There was something else happening here, something she couldn't quite identify yet. Meanwhile, social media exploded. People watching the live stream began posting frantically. Within minutes, hashtags like Royal Guard Met Gala and Guard at Gala were trending worldwide. Theories flew across Twitter and Instagram. Some thought it was a planned performance. Others believed it was a protest. A few correctly guessed it might be connected to the theme of the evenings. Exhibition.celebrity guests arriving after James found themselves answering questions about the uniformed guard instead of their own outfits. Reporters shouted questions. Did you see the Royal Guard? What do you think he's doing here? Is this part of the show? Blake Lively, arriving in an elaborate gown, stopped to watch James as he passed. That's either the most committed method actor I've ever seen, or something really interesting is happening, she told a reporter with genuine intrigue in her voice. As James reached the main step leading into the museum, two security guards finally approached him. They were polite but firm, asking him to identify himself and explain his presence. James stopped, maintaining his stoic expression. and spoke for the first time since arriving. "My name is James Harrison, Grenadier Guards, British Army," he said in a clear, calm voice with a distinct British accent. "I understand I'm not on your guest list. I'm not trying to enter your event without permission. I came here for my sister." The security guards exchanged confused looks. This wasn't the response they expected. Before they could ask more questions, Anna Wintour herself walked over. She had decided she needed to understand what was happening directly. "I'm Anna Wintour," she introduced herself, though James certainly knew who she was. "Can you please explain what you're doing here?" James took a deep breath. This was the moment he had been both dreading and hoping for. He reached into his jacket pocket slowly, making sure security could see he was only retrieving a piece of paper. He unfolded it and handed it to Anna. It was a photograph of Emily in her hospital bed smiling weakly at the camera. She was wearing a handmade paper crown and holding a makeshift scepter made from a wooden spoon and aluminum foil. Surrounding her bed were printouts of famous Met Gala dresses taped to the walls. "This is my sister, Emily Harrison," James began, his voice steady despite the emotion threatening to break through his military composure. "She's 24 years old and she's dying of cancer. Fashion is her entire life. The Met Gala is her biggest dream. She's too sick to be here tonight, so I came instead." Anna looked at the photograph, then back at James. The red carpet had gone quiet. Even the photographers had stopped shooting, sensing they were witnessing something profound. James continued, "I know I shouldn't be here. I know this is inappropriate, and I'm probably going to face serious consequences for wearing my uniform like this. But my sister is in a hospital bed in Brooklyn right now, watching your live stream, and I wanted her to see that her dream was honored. I wanted her to know that even if she can't be here in person, someone who loves her stood on this carpet and represented everything she believes in about ceremony, tradition, and beauty." His voice finally cracked slightly on the last word, but he maintained his posture. Around them, people who had gathered to see what the commotion was about stood in complete silence. Several people in the crowd wiped tears from their eyes. Anna Wintour looked at James for a long moment. She had built her reputation on being tough, exacting, and uncompromising. But she was also human, and the story this young soldier had just told touched something deep within her. "What's your sister's name again?" Anna asked softly. "Emily. Emily Harrison." Anna turned to her assistant. "Get me a phone now." She turned back to James. "You said she's watching the live stream?" James nodded. "I hope so. She was very weak this afternoon, but she promised me she would try to watch." What happened next would be talked about for years to come. Anna Wintour, the woman known for her exacting standards and no-nonsense approach, made a decision that went against every protocol of the exclusive event she had carefully crafted. "James," she said, using his first name, "I think your uniform is absolutely perfect for tonight. In fact, I think it might be the most meaningful outfit anyone wears to this event." She gestured toward the museum entrance. "Would you like to come inside? I think your sister should see you walk through these doors." James couldn't believe what he was hearing. His stoic expression finally broke, replaced by shock and gratitude. "Ma'am, I couldn't possibly. I don't have a ticket. I'm not invited." "You are now," Anna said firmly. "Consider this your official invitation. Sometimes the most important guests are the ones who remind us what truly matters." The crowd that had gathered burst into applause. Photographers began shooting again, capturing the moment when the stern fashion icon invited an uninvited soldier in uniform to join the world's most exclusive fashion event. Anna turned to the cameras that were broadcasting live. "To Emily Harrison watching from Brooklyn," she said, looking directly into the lens. "Your brother just showed us all what real courage and love look like. This event is as much yours tonight as it is anyone's here. We're honored to have your representative with us." In her hospital bed in Brooklyn, Emily Harrison watched the live stream on her tablet with tears streaming down her face. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. Her brother, her protector, her only family, had done the impossible. He had made her dream come true in a way she never could have imagined. Her nurse, who had been watching with her, squeezed her hand gently. "Your brother must love you very much." Emily nodded, unable to speak through her tears and overwhelming emotion. On the screen, she watched James, still in his perfect Royal Guard uniform, begin walking into the Metropolitan Museum of Art, accompanied by Anna Wintour herself. The story was far from over. What happened inside the museum that night would prove even more remarkable than James's dramatic arrival. As James walked through the grand entrance of the Metropolitan Museum with Anna Wintour, word of what had happened spread through the event like wildfire. Guests who had already arrived gathered to catch a glimpse of the soldier in full ceremonial dress. The story being whispered from person to person grew more detailed with each telling. James felt overwhelmed by the grandeur around him. Crystal chandeliers hung from impossibly high ceilings. Elaborate floral arrangements filled every corner. And everywhere he looked, he saw famous faces he had only seen on television or in magazines. Actors, musicians, models, designers, and cultural icons filled the museum's halls, all dressed in extraordinary outfits that represented months of planning and millions of dollars in craftsmanship. And there he was, in his military uniform, feeling completely out of place, yet knowing this was exactly where his sister would have wanted to be. Anna guided him through the cocktail reception area, and something unexpected began happening. Instead of treating him as an outsider or curiosity, celebrities started approaching James to shake his hand and hear his story. Anna had quietly spread word about Emily among several key guests, and the response was immediate and heartfelt. Rihanna, wearing an elaborate sculptural gown, was one of the first to approach. She took James's hand in both of hers and looked directly into his eyes. "What you did for your sister is beautiful," she said simply. "That's real love. That's what matters more than any of this." She gestured around at the opulent event. James thanked her, still struggling to process that he was having a conversation with one of the world's biggest music stars. Rihanna then did something that surprised everyone. She pulled out her phone and asked if she could take a photo with him to post to her social media, along with Emily's story. "Your sister should see that people here know her name," Rihanna explained. "She's part of this night now." Within minutes of Rihanna posting the photo with an explanation of James's mission, her hundreds of millions of followers learned about Emily Harrison and her dream. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Messages of support, prayers, and encouragement flooded in from around the world. Other celebrities followed Rihanna's lead. Zendaya, Timothée Chalamet, and Lady Gaga all sought out James to express their admiration and take photos to share Emily's story. Each interaction was genuine and heartfelt. These were people who lived their lives in the spotlight, who attended countless exclusive events, but they recognized something authentic and moving in what James had done. Lady Gaga, known for her theatrical fashion statements and big personality, actually had tears in her eyes when she spoke to James. "I lost someone close to me to cancer," she told him quietly, away from the cameras. "What you're doing for your sister. She knows how much you love her. That's everything. That's more than everything." As the evening progressed, James found himself being introduced to fashion designers whose work Emily had studied and admired. When he met Valentino, the legendary designer nearly 80 years old, James mentioned that Emily had written a term paper about his influence on red carpet fashion in the 1990s. Valentino smiled warmly. "Your sister has good taste," he said in his Italian accent. "Tell me, what size does she wear?" James looked confused. "I'm sorry, what?" "Your sister's size," Valentino repeated patiently. "I would like to send her something special. A dress, perhaps. Something beautiful for when she's feeling better." James felt his throat tighten with emotion. "That's incredibly kind of you, sir. She would be absolutely overwhelmed." "It would be my honor," Valentino said. He handed his card to James. "Have someone contact my atelier with her measurements. I'll make sure she receives something worthy of a fashion scholar." This pattern repeated throughout the evening. Designer after designer, upon hearing Emily's story, offered to send her pieces from their collections. Some wanted to send scarves or accessories she could enjoy even during treatment. Others promised special pieces for her future career in fashion. What had started as one brother's desperate attempt to honor his dying sister's dream had turned into an outpouring of generosity from the fashion world's elite. But the most significant moment of the evening was still to come. Anna Wintour had been making calls throughout the event. She had been moved by James's story in a way she hadn't expected, and she was determined to do something meaningful. She approached James during dinner service with a proposal that would change everything. "James," she said, pulling him aside from a conversation he was having with a group of young designers, "I've been thinking about Emily. I'd like to arrange something. If you're willing." "Anything," James said immediately. "You've already done so much more than I ever hoped for." "How would Emily feel about doing a video call right now?" Anna asked. I thought perhaps you would like to see what's happening here, to experience a bit of the event in real time rather than just watching the broadcast. James felt his heart leap. She would love that. But I should warn you, she's very weak. She might not be able to talk much. That's perfectly fine, Anna assured him. I just think it would be special for her to have a more personal connection to tonight. Anna's assistant set up a large tablet on a stand in a quieter corner of the event. James called the hospital, and within a few minutes Emily's face appeared on the screen. She looked exhausted and frail, but her eyes were bright with excitement and tears. James, she said, her voice weak. Is this real? Am I dreaming? It's real, Em, James said, his own voice thick with emotion. All of it. You're at the Met Gala with me. Anna stepped into view of the camera. Emily, I'm Anna Winter. Your brother has told us about you, and I wanted to say personally that you belong here tonight. Your passion for fashion and your strength inspire all of us. Emily began crying, overwhelmed by everything. I can't believe this is happening, she managed to say. Thank you. Thank you so much, but Anna wasn't finished. She gestured, and suddenly, famous faces began appearing in the frame behind James. Celebrities who had heard what was happening came over to greet Emily directly. They waved, blew kisses, and shared words of encouragement. Keep fighting, beautiful, Bianca told her through the screen. Your spirit is incredible, added Harry Styles. Billie Eilish held up a heart shape with her hands, sending you all my love. Emily was laughing and crying simultaneously, completely overwhelmed by the surreal experience of having her heroes speak directly to her from the event she had dreamed about for years. The video call lasted nearly 30 minutes. James walked around the event with the tablet, showing Emily the decorations, the fashion, the artworks. He introduced her to designers she had studied. He showed her details of dresses she had only seen in photographs before. At one point, a young designer named Marcus Wellington approached them. He had been quiet earlier in the evening, just observing James and hearing Emily's story. Now he spoke up. Emily, he said to the camera, I don't know if you know my work yet. I'm relatively new to high fashion, but I want you to know that your story tonight reminded me why I got into this industry. It's not about the glamour or the fame. It's about creating beauty that moves people, that means something to them. He paused, gathering his courage. When you finish your degree and you're ready to start your career, I would be honored if you would come work with me. As an assistant designer. Paid position, full benefits. I know I'm not Valentino or Chanel, but I promise you'll learn and I promise you'll be valued. Emily stared at the screen in disbelief. Are you serious? She whispered. Completely serious, Marcus confirmed. Get well, finish school, and the job is yours whenever you're ready. Emily broke down completely then, sobbing with joy and gratitude. Her nurse appeared in the frame, checking on her with concern, but Emily waved her away. These are happy tears, she insisted. The happiest tears of my life. As the evening wound down and James prepared to leave, he felt transformed. He had come to the Met Gala expecting, at best, to walk the red carpet for a few minutes before being escorted away. Instead, he had spent hours inside the most exclusive fashion event in the world, met dozens of celebrities and designers, and given his dying sister an experience beyond anything either of them had imagined possible. The morning after the Met Gala, James woke up in his modest hotel room to discover that the world had changed overnight. His phone had died from the constant stream of notifications, and when he plugged it in to charge, it immediately began buzzing nonstop with messages, calls, and alerts. The story of the royal guard who crashed the Met Gala for his dying sister had become international news. Major newspapers, television networks, and online media outlets around the globe were covering it. The photos of James in his uniform walking the red carpet were everywhere. Videos of celebrities greeting Emily through the tablet had gone viral, racking up hundreds of millions of views. But James barely had time to process his sudden fame because his phone rang with a call that made his stomach drop. It was his commanding officer from the Grenadier Guards. Guardsman Harrison. The voice on the other end was stern and formal. I need you to explain to me why I'm seeing photographs of you in full ceremonial dress at an American fashion event without authorization. James's heart sank. He had known this moment would come. He had worn his uniform without permission for a non-military purpose. In the military, such actions had serious consequences. He could face court-martial, demotion, or dismissal from service. Sir, I can explain, James began, then proceeded to tell his commanding officer everything about Emily's diagnosis, her dream, his decision to honor it, and how events had spiraled far beyond what he had anticipated. There was a long silence on the other end of the line when James finished speaking. Finally, his commanding officer spoke again, his tone slightly softer but still serious. "What you did was highly irregular, Guardsman Harrison. The uniform you wear represents the British Crown and centuries of military tradition. It is not to be used for personal purposes, regardless of how worthy those purposes might be." "Yes, sir." "I understand, sir. I accept whatever punishment you see fit." Another pause, then. "However, I'm also seeing that your actions last night have generated an enormous amount of positive attention for the Guards and for British-American relations. The British Embassy in Washington has already contacted us. Apparently, the Prime Minister's office is aware of the situation and is monitoring public response." James hadn't expected that. "Sir? The palace is not pleased with the unauthorized use of the uniform," his commander continued, "but they're also aware that public sentiment is overwhelmingly supportive of what you did and why you did it. You've put us in a rather complicated position, Harrison." "I'm sorry, sir. That was never my intention." "I know it wasn't. Look, there's going to be a formal inquiry into this matter. You'll need to return to London immediately to face questions. But unofficially, between you and me, I want you to know that what you did for your sister took real courage. Not the kind we typically recognize in military service, but courage nonetheless." After the call ended, James sat on his hotel bed feeling drained. He had given Emily an incredible experience, but the price might be his career and his honor as a soldier. His phone rang again. This time it was the hospital calling. His heart raced with fear. Was Emily okay? Had the excitement of the previous night been too much for her weakened body? "Mr. Harrison?" The nurse's voice came through. "I'm calling with some surprising news. Emily had a remarkable night. After the video call ended, she was more energized than we've seen her in weeks. She stayed awake for hours watching coverage of the event, reading messages from people around the world. This morning, she's actually asking for real food for the first time in days." James felt tears spring to his eyes. "Is that good?" "Medically, I mean. Her oncologist wants to run some tests, but yes, it's very good. We can't say anything definitive yet, but her spirits affect her physical state more than many people realize. What you did for her last night, Mr. Harrison, may have given her the boost she needed to keep fighting." After hanging up, James finally allowed himself to cry. Whatever consequences he faced professionally, hearing that Emily was doing better made everything worthwhile. Over the next few days, the story continued to grow. Social media campaigns sprang up organically. People started using hashtags like Fight Like Emily and Guardsmen of Love. Strangers from around the world sent messages of support and shared their own stories of siblings, parents, or friends they had cared for during illness. The attention reached levels that nobody could have predicted. Major talk shows wanted to interview James. Book publishers reached out about his story. Hollywood producers expressed interest in adaptation rights. James declined all of these offers. This wasn't about fame or profit for him. It was about his sister, and he wanted to protect her privacy as much as possible. But some opportunities couldn't be refused. The British Embassy in Washington contacted him directly. A representative explained that while his actions had created a diplomatic situation, the overwhelming positive response from Americans meant that the British government wanted to handle the matter carefully. "The truth is, Guardsman Harrison, you've done more for British-American relations in one night than months of official diplomatic efforts," the representative told him. "People are talking about British military tradition, about honor and duty and family love. Those are messages our government is happy to have associated with Britain." Meanwhile, Emily's hospital room had become a hub of activity. So many flowers, gifts, and cards arrived that the hospital had to dedicate a conference room to storing them. Fashion designers from around the world sent samples, sketches, and personal notes. Students from fashion schools sent portfolios and messages of encouragement. People who had survived cancer sent their stories in support. Marcus Wellington, the young designer who had offered Emily a job, stayed in regular contact with the hospital. He sent her fashion magazines, sketches of upcoming collections, and video messages explaining his design process. He wanted her to know his job offer was genuine and that he was invested in her recovery. The packages from Valentino arrived in an elegant trunk. Inside were 3 custom pieces: a flowing silk evening gown in Emily's favorite color, a tailored jacket with intricate embroidery, and a stunning day dress. Each piece had been made specifically for her measurements, which James had provided. A handwritten note from Valentino himself wished her strength and recovery, but the most surprising development came from Anna Wintour herself. She arranged for Vogue to do a feature article about Emily, her journey with cancer, and her passion for fashion. A writer and photographer visited her in the hospital, capturing her story with dignity and sensitivity. "I want people to know who you are," Anna explained to Emily during a phone call. "Not just as James's sister, not just as the girl who inspired." A beautiful moment at the Met Gala, but as a talented young woman with her own dreams and potential. Fashion is about telling stories, and yours deserves to be told. The article, when it was published a few weeks later, was profound and moving. It featured photos of Emily in her hospital bed, surrounded by sketches and fabric samples, her bald head held high with dignity. She spoke about her design philosophy, her inspirations, and her determination to fight her illness. The article didn't shy away from the reality of her condition, but it also celebrated her spirit and talent. The response was overwhelming. Fashion students around the world reached out to Emily, forming an international network of support and creative exchange. Some of them started an online petition asking major fashion schools to establish scholarships in Emily's name for students facing serious illness. Back in London, James appeared before a military board to answer questions about his use of the uniform. He stood at attention and answered every question honestly. He didn't make excuses or try to minimize what he had done. He had worn the uniform without authorization for personal reasons, and he accepted responsibility. The board members listened carefully. They reviewed the media coverage, the public response, and the statements from the British Embassy. Finally, the senior officer on the panel spoke. "Guardsman Harrison, what you did was, strictly speaking, against regulations. The uniform of the Royal Guard is sacred and its use is tightly controlled for good reason. You violated those protocols, and ordinarily such a violation would result in serious disciplinary action." James stood perfectly still, waiting for his punishment. "However," the officer continued, "the circumstances of your case are unprecedented. You acted out of love for your sister, and your actions, while unauthorized, brought honor to the guards in the eyes of the public. You demonstrated the values of selflessness, courage, and devotion to family that are core to military service." The officer paused, looking directly at James. "After extensive deliberation and consultation with senior command, we have decided that you will receive an official reprimand for unauthorized use of the uniform. This will remain in your permanent record. However, you will not face demotion, suspension, or dismissal." James felt his knees nearly buckle with relief, but he maintained his military bearing. "Thank you, sir. There's one more thing," the officer added, a slight smile breaking through his stern expression. "The publicity from this incident has resulted in a significant increase in applications to the Guards from qualified candidates. Young people are saying they want to serve in a regiment that values love and honor as much as discipline and duty." In a strange, 3 months after the Met Gala, Emily Harrison sat in her oncologist's office waiting for test results that would determine her future. The chemotherapy had been brutal, draining her of energy and making even simple tasks feel monumental. But something had changed after that magical night when her brother walked the red carpet in his uniform. Emily had found a reason to keep fighting that went beyond just survival. The messages from fashion students around the world, the job offer from Marcus Wellington, the gifts from legendary designers, and the Vogue article had all given her a sense of purpose. She wasn't just a cancer patient anymore. She was someone whose story mattered, someone with dreams worth fighting for. James sat beside her, holding her hand. He had returned to London to face his military hearing, but he took every possible leave day to fly back to New York and be with his sister. The official reprimand on his record felt like a small price to pay for what they had experienced together. The oncologist entered the room with a folder of test results. Emily squeezed James's hand tighter, preparing herself for whatever news was coming. "Emily," the doctor began, and Emily noticed something unusual in her expression. It wasn't the carefully neutral face doctors wore when delivering bad news. There was something else there, something that looked almost like excitement. "Your latest scans show something remarkable," the doctor continued, opening the folder. "The tumors have shrunk significantly, more than we dared hope for at this stage of treatment. Your blood work is showing improvement across all markers. Your body is responding to treatment better than we could have predicted." Emily felt her breath catch. "What does that mean?" "It means you're going to be okay," the doctor said, allowing herself to smile. "You're not out of the woods yet. You'll need continued treatment and monitoring, but the cancer is responding." "You're beating this, Emily." Emily burst into tears, and James wrapped his arms around her, crying along with her. After months of uncertainty, of preparing themselves for the possibility that Emily might not survive, they finally had real hope. "When can I go back to school?" Emily asked through her tears. "When can I start designing again?" The doctor laughed softly. "Let's get you through the next round of treatment first. But yes, Emily, you're going to finish your degree. You're going to have that career in fashion you've dreamed about." The news spread quickly through the network of people who had been following Emily's story. Anna Winter sent an enormous bouquet of white roses with a note. "I knew you were a fighter. The fashion world is waiting for you." Rihanna posted on social media, "Emily is winning." Never doubted her for a second. Sending love and light. Marcus Wellington called Emily personally. "I meant what I said about that job offer. Take all the time you need to heal and finish school. When you're ready, I'll be here." The fashion community rallied around Emily's recovery with the same enthusiasm they had shown during her illness. Several major designers announced they were donating to cancer research organizations in her name. A scholarship fund for fashion students facing serious illness was established, with contributions pouring in from around the world. But for Emily and James, the most meaningful response came from ordinary people. Letters arrived daily from cancer patients and survivors who said Emily's story had given them hope. Parents of sick children wrote to say that seeing James's devotion to his sister reminded them to cherish every moment with their families. Fashion students shared how Emily's determination inspired them to pursue their dreams despite obstacles. Emily began recovering her strength slowly. Her hair started growing back, different from before but beautiful in its own way. She returned to her apartment in Brooklyn, which she had barely seen in months. It still had the Met Gala photographs on the walls, but now they meant something different. They weren't just distant dreams anymore. They were part of her story. She enrolled in her final semester of fashion school, determined to complete her degree. Her professors and classmates welcomed her back with overwhelming support. She was no longer just another student. She was someone who had faced death and chosen to come back fighting. Emily threw herself into her coursework with renewed passion. Her final collection, which she would present for graduation, became the focus of all her creative energy. She wanted it to mean something, to represent her journey. She designed a series of pieces inspired by medical imagery and healing. One dress incorporated fabric that looked like X-ray images. Another used metallic threads that resembled surgical tools but created beautiful patterns. A third piece featured embroidery inspired by cellular structures, representing the body's fight against disease. Her professors were stunned by the maturity and depth of the work. One of them, a veteran designer who had taught for 30 years, told Emily it was some of the most emotionally powerful fashion he had ever seen. "You're not just making clothes," he said. "You're telling a story about survival, about beauty emerging from struggle. This is what great design does." As Emily's graduation approached, James requested leave to attend. His commanding officers not only approved it, but did something unexpected. They told James that the Grenadier Guards wanted to make a formal appearance at Emily's graduation show as a show of support. "You honored your sister in our uniform," his commander explained. "Now we'd like to honor her properly, with full authorization this time." The graduation show took place in a converted warehouse space in Manhattan. Fashion industry professionals, press, and families filled the seats. Emily's collection was scheduled to close the show, a position of honor typically reserved for the most accomplished student. As the lights dimmed and music began, Emily stood backstage feeling more nervous than she ever had in her life. This was the moment she had dreamed about, worked toward, nearly died before achieving. Her designs were about to walk down a real runway, seen by real fashion professionals who could make or break a young designer's career. The first model stepped out wearing Emily's X-ray-inspired dress. The audience gasped at its beauty and innovation. Each subsequent piece received similar reactions. The collection was dark and medical, but also hopeful and beautiful, representing the duality of fighting a serious illness. For the finale, Emily had created a stunning white gown that seemed to glow under the lights. It represented healing, hope, and new beginnings. The fabric flowed like water and the details shimmered like stars. But Emily had arranged a surprise for this final moment. As the model in the white gown reached the end of the runway, the doors at the back of the venue opened. 4 members of the Grenadier Guards in full ceremonial uniform marched in with perfect precision. Leading them was James. The audience rose to their feet in spontaneous applause, many people crying openly. The guards marched down the center aisle and took positions at attention on either side of the runway. James stood at the front, his face showing the same disciplined expression he had maintained at the Met Gala, but his eyes were shining with pride. Emily walked out from backstage, still thin from her treatment but radiant with joy and accomplishment. She walked down the runway in jeans and a simple black top, the designer acknowledging her work. When she reached the end where James stood, she finally broke down crying and he broke formation to embrace his sister. The standing ovation lasted for several minutes. Fashion critics who had seen thousands of shows said they had never witnessed anything like it. The combination of Emily's powerful designs and the emotional story behind them created a moment that transcended typical fashion presentation. After the show, Emily was swarmed by industry professionals. Buyers wanted to know if she would be producing any of the pieces commercially. Editors wanted interviews. Other designers wanted to meet her and discuss collaboration opportunities. But the most meaningful conversation happened when Anna Winter approached Emily. The legendary editor had flown in specifically for the graduation show, despite her impossibly busy schedule. "Emily," Anna said simply, "that was extraordinary. Not just the clothes, though they're remarkable, but what you've done with your pain, your fear, your struggle. You've transformed it into art. That's what the greatest designers do." She handed Emily her card, the same card that countless aspiring fashion professionals had dreamed of receiving. "Call me next week. I'd like to discuss some opportunities. We need voices like yours in this industry." Emily looked at the card, at James standing nearby in his uniform, at the crowd of people who had come to support her, and felt overwhelmed by gratitude. She had faced the possibility of death and somehow emerged not just alive but with her dreams becoming reality. Marcus Wellington made his way through the crowd to Emily. "I hope you haven't forgotten my job offer," he said with a smile. "After seeing this collection, I'm even more eager to work with you. Whenever you're ready, the position is waiting." That night, after the venue had emptied and Emily had returned to her apartment, she sat surrounded by the gifts and messages that had accumulated over the months. The Valentino pieces hung in her closet. The Vogue article with her face on the cover sat framed on her desk. Sketches from famous designers covered her walls, but the thing she treasured most was a simple photograph taken after the graduation show. It showed her standing with James, both of them laughing, his arm around her shoulders. In the background, 1 year after James Harrison walked the red carpet at the Met Gala in his Royal Guard uniform, he and Emily stood together at another major fashion event. This time, however, everything was different. Emily wasn't watching from a hospital bed. She was attending as an invited guest, a rising young designer whose work had captured the attention of the fashion world. The event was Fashion Week in New York, and Emily Harrison was about to present her first professional collection. After graduating, she had spent months working with Marcus Wellington, learning the business side of fashion while developing her own unique voice as a designer. The job he had offered during that emotional video call from the Met Gala had become the foundation of her career. But Emily had also decided to launch her own line, something deeply personal that reflected her journey. She called it Renaissance, representing rebirth and transformation. The collection explored themes of healing, strength, and beauty emerging from struggle. It was fashion as therapy, as storytelling, as survival. Major fashion publications had already written about Emily's upcoming debut. The story of the Met Gala, her battle with cancer, and her powerful graduation collection had made her one of the most anticipated new designers of the year. But Emily tried not to think about expectations or pressure. She focused on the work itself, on the designs that meant something to her. James had traveled from London for the show, taking leave that his commanders granted without hesitation. The guards had embraced the positive attention that came from James's story, and they now viewed Emily as an honorary member of their extended family. Several guards had even contributed to the scholarship fund established in Emily's name. Backstage before the show, Emily felt the familiar nervousness that came with any major presentation. But it was different from the terror she had experienced during her graduation. She had already faced the worst thing that could happen to a person: cancer, the possibility of death, losing everything before her life really began. Compared to that, a fashion show felt manageable. "You're going to be brilliant," James told her, straightening his tie. He wasn't in uniform today. This was Emily's moment, not his. He was here simply as her brother, her supporter, her biggest fan. "I can't believe this is real," Emily said, looking at the racks of clothing that would soon walk down the runway. "A year ago, I thought I was going to die without ever achieving anything. Now I'm here actually doing this." "You earned this," James reminded her. "Every single bit of it. You fought, you survived, you worked incredibly hard. This isn't charity or sympathy. This is talent and determination." The show space filled with industry professionals, celebrities, and press. Emily noticed familiar faces in the audience. Anna Wintour sat in the front row, her signature sunglasses in place. Rihanna was there, having cleared her schedule, specifically to support Emily. Several of the designers who had sent gifts during Emily's illness attended to see what the young woman they had encouraged was capable of. But Emily had also insisted on reserving seats for people who represented different parts of her journey. Her oncologist attended, proud to see her patient thriving. Nurses from the hospital came, having followed Emily's recovery with personal investment. Fashion students who had reached out to Emily during her illness came from various schools, seeing her success as proof that obstacles could be overcome. As the lights dimmed and the first model stepped out, Emily's heart pounded. The opening piece was a jacket made from fabric that looked like medical charts but created a beautiful abstract pattern. It represented Emily's philosophy, taking the clinical, frightening aspects of illness and transforming them into something beautiful and powerful. Each subsequent piece told part of her story. Dresses with structural elements inspired by X-rays and MRI scans. A stunning gown with embroidery resembling cellular structures. Separates that played with the idea of armor and protection. The color palette moved from darker tones representing illness to brighter ones symbolizing hope and recovery. The audience was silent, completely absorbed in what they were seeing. This wasn't just fashion. It was art, therapy, and storytelling woven together. Critics who had seen thousands of collections scribbled notes frantically, knowing they were witnessing something special. For the finale, Emily had created something unexpected. It was a white ensemble similar to the one that had closed her graduation show, but evolved and more sophisticated. The model wearing it was Emily's friend Sarah, who had also survived cancer and had become close to Emily during treatment. As Sarah reached the end of the runway, music swelled, and Emily herself stepped out from backstage to join her. But she wasn't alone. Walking beside her were 5 other young women, all cancer survivors who Emily had met through support groups and online communities. Each wore a piece from Emily's collection. The 6 women stood together at the end of the runway, representing survival, sisterhood, and the beauty of life after trauma. They held hands and bowed together, tears streaming down several faces. The audience erupted. People rose to their feet, applauding not just for the fashion but for what it represented. Several audience members were crying openly, moved by the powerful statement Emily had made about turning pain into art, about surviving and thriving. James stood and applauded his sister, his eyes filled with tears of pride. This was the moment he had hoped for when he made that crazy decision to walk the Met Gala red carpet in his uniform. He had wanted to give his dying sister a glimpse of her dream. Instead, he had helped spark a journey that led to this. Emily standing triumphant in her own right, a survivor and an artist. After the show, Emily was surrounded by people wanting to congratulate her, order pieces, discuss collaboration opportunities. Major department stores wanted to carry her line. Celebrities wanted to wear her designs. Fashion schools wanted her to come speak to students about perseverance and creativity. Anna Wintour approached Emily with an expression that might have been the closest thing to a genuine smile that most people ever saw from her. "You did it," she said simply. "You created something meaningful. This industry needs more designers who understand that fashion can be more than just clothes. It can be healing. It can be transformative." She paused, then added, "Vogue would like to do a major feature on your collection, and I'd like to discuss having you design something for next year's Met Gala." Emily felt her knees go weak. The Met Gala, the event that had started everything, the dream that had seemed impossible from her hospital bed. Now she was being asked to create designs for it as an actual designer, not just a dying girl's fantasy. "I would be honored," Emily managed to say. Marcus Wellington beamed with pride at his young colleague's success. He had taken a chance offering her a job during that emotional video call, moved by her story but also recognizing genuine talent. Now that Faith was being validated in the most public way possible, Rihanna approached Emily and gave her a long, warm hug. "I told you that you would make it," she said. "Your spirit is unstoppable. I want to wear something from this collection at my next event, something that tells people about strength and survival." As the evening wound down and Emily finally found a moment to breathe, she sought out James. He was standing to the side, having deliberately stayed out of the spotlight. This was Emily's night, her achievement, and he didn't want to detract from it. "Thank you," Emily said simply, hugging her brother tightly. "None of this would have happened without you. You saved my life in every way possible." James held her close. "You saved your own life, Em. You fought. You survived. You created all of this. I just wore a uniform and walked down a carpet." "You did so much more than that," Emily insisted. "You gave me a reason to keep fighting. You showed me that my dreams mattered, that I mattered. When I was at my lowest point, you reminded me that there was still magic and beauty in the world worth living for." Over the following months, Emily's career flourished. Her Renaissance collection sold out within weeks. Major fashion magazines featured her work. She was invited to speak at conferences about design, survival, and finding inspiration in adversity. But Emily stayed grounded. She remembered the darkness of her illness, the fear, the uncertainty. She used her platform to advocate for cancer patients, especially young people whose lives were interrupted by disease. She donated a portion of all profits to cancer research and support organizations. The scholarship fund established in her name grew substantially. Emily took personal interest in the recipients, mentoring fashion students who were facing serious illness. She wanted them to know that creativity could survive even the hardest circumstances. James continued his service with the Grenadier Guards. His record marked with that official reprimand, but also with commendations for his subsequent exemplary service. His fellow guardsmen treated him with respect, and new recruits often heard the story of the soldier who loved his sister enough to risk everything for her dream. 2 years after the Met Gala incident, James received an unexpected letter. It was from Buckingham Palace. His heart raced as he opened it, fearing some delayed additional punishment for his unauthorized use of the uniform. Instead, he found an invitation. The palace was hosting a special ceremony, honoring individuals who had demonstrated extraordinary devotion to family while maintaining their service.